Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, January 18th, 2021. And as always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or in the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've learned in the last 46 and a half years of doing therapy. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the red and white bullseye or the link in the upper left-hand corner of most pages, it says Start Here. It'll take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? That chapter of that book is a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. It's called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And that tool I've been using for over 17 years to manage my emotional states, to use my negative emotional states to guide me into an internal process which helps me dismantle the roots of the negative emotion and restore my awareness to a more accurate perception, closer to actuality. I may never reach full actual perception, what they call true spiritual perception, where I'm able to see the world as it was created to be rather than through the filters of my past experience and my family traumas, etc. So every time I use the Reality Management Worksheet or any of the associated tools that are available on that web page, I improve my perception. And with improved perception and clarity comes better decision making and then better consequences for those decisions in my life. On that web page, you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Ryce's book. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. You can download a whole host of audio files of shows like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process or talked about the dynamics involved and how that process is so powerful while being deceptively simple. And you can also go to your app store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app that carries the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, all for one easy download. If you do that, which we encourage people to do soon and often, and then have any kind of questions or testimonials or would like to improve your efficiency with being able to use that tool to your best benefit, give us a call. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. When you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number. I'll announce it by your area code, and we can have a conversation. And we appreciate when people do that because it makes it easier for us to live into our intention, which is to be of service. And in the interest of trying to be of service, we have agreed to go through the Course in Miracles lessons, one lesson for each day of the year. And we tried to remember to do on Fridays to go through 3 lessons. So we have Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays so people can work on their lessons throughout the week. But I neglected to do that at the beginning of the session last Friday, and so at the very end, Ellen reminded me of that. So we hastily went through the Saturday and Sunday lessons. So I'm going to review the Sunday lesson and then today's lesson. Yesterday's lesson reads as follows: I see no neutral things. This is the 17th lesson. The commentary reads, this idea is another step in the direction of identifying cause and effect as it really operates in the world. You see no neutral things because you have no neutral thoughts, as we were told in Lesson 16. It is always the thought that comes first. despite the temptation to believe that it is the other way around. This is not the way the world thinks, but you must learn that it is the way you think. In applying today's idea, say to yourself with eyes open, I see no neutral things because I have no neutral thoughts. Then look around you, resting your glance on each thing you note long enough to say, I do not see a neutral wall because my thoughts about walls are not neutral. I do not see a neutral body because my thoughts about bodies are not neutral. As usual, it is essential to make no distinctions between what you believe to be animate or inanimate, pleasant or unpleasant. Regardless of what you may believe, you do not see anything that is really alive or really joyous. That is because you are unaware of yet any thought that is really true and therefore really happy. Take 3 or 4 specific practice periods and are recommended, and no less than 3 are required for maximum benefit, even if you experience resistance. However, if you do, the length of the practice period may be reduced so you don't feel the resistance as strongly. Pam Grout, in her book, The Course in Miracles Experiment, has this to say about the 17th lesson. She titles that chapter, Change Your Story, Change Your Life. She quotes Teilhard de Chardin, who said, the universe, as we know it, is a joint product of the observer and the observed. Pam writes, several years ago, People magazine sent me to interview the runner-up of the reality show, The Bachelor. The assignment was to find out if reality shows truly depict reality. Although we reporters are taught to be objective and simply report facts, I'm savvy enough to know that reality, like beauty, is in the mind of the beholder. The bachelorette I interviewed was very clear that reality shows are anything but true. Early on, she was cast by the producers as a certain character, a particular personality type, namely the partier. Once that happened, everything that fit that storyline was shown on TV, and everything that didn't was left on the cutting room floor. Even though we may not be television producers, we all edit our life experiences to fit the stories we make up. If our storyline is that our boss is a jerk, for example, everything that furthers that plot goes straight to the archive and the active portion of our brain. If our story is that an insignificant other is lazy, if our significant other is lazy, everything that jibes with that scenario is registered and magnified. The gazillion good things our boss and our partners do get left on the cutting room floor. We literally can't see them. Likewise, if we believe life is hard or that money is difficult to come by, we find evidence to further that storyline in our lives. Lesson 17, which reads, I see no neutral things, is an important step in identifying cause and effect as it operates in the world. It's a spiritual law as reliable as gravity. I magnetize into my life whatever my non-neutral thoughts focus on. Here's the routine. I do not see a neutral car because my thoughts about cars are not neutral. 3 times a day I'm asked to look about and recognize that I'm seeing, and nothing that I'm seeing is neutral. The lesson for today reads, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. This one's going to challenge some people. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. The idea for today is another step in learning that the thoughts which give rise to what you see are never neutral or unimportant. It also emphasizes the idea that minds are joined, which will be given increasing stress later on. Today's idea does not refer to what you see as much as how you see it. Therefore, the exercises for today emphasize this aspect of your perception. The 3 or 4 practice periods which are recommended should be done as follows. Look about you, selecting subjects for the application of the idea for today as randomly as possible, and keeping your eyes on each one long enough to say, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see this computer. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see this book. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see this lamp. Conclude each practice period by repeating the more general statement, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. A minute or so, even less, will be sufficient for each practice period. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Pam Grout, in her book, The Course in Miracles Experiment, Chapter 18 reads, title of We're All in This Together. Mark Wahlberg is quoted as saying, it is all about love and how we are all connected. In 2018, Pam writes, Ellen Pompeo, you probably know her as Meredith Grey on Grey's Anatomy, she became the highest paid actress on a television drama. She walked away from contract negotiations with a cool $575,000 per episode. That's not bad for a kid from a blue-collar Boston home whose mother died of an overdose when she was just 5. It also represents Lesson 18. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Pompeo said she became empowered by watching Shonda Rhimes, the creator of Grey's Anatomy. As Shonda grew into her own power, as she shook off the shackles of the old paradigm, that of not being worthy, of not being paid as well as her male counterparts, Ellen was able to do it too. And that's just the starting line for not being alone in the effects of my perceptions. In fact, the majority of my interactions with others occur in the non-physical realm. All those thoughts that I'm privately thinking to myself, I think I'm privately thinking to myself, actually, they're not private at all. I might as well bellow them over an intercom. Subtly yet powerfully, everyone is getting the message anyway. Whether aware of it or not, I am connected to a giant database and am constantly exchanging energy, not only with those in my inner circle, but with every being on the planet. Today, in 3 or 4 quick practice periods, I'm asked to look around, pick a couple of random subjects, and say, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see this desk. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that African mask. I am not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see those sunglasses or that water bottle. How I see things affects how others see them. Maybe not a terribly useful concept when it comes to water bottles, but think how pertinent and healing to change how I see, let's say, a serial killer or a ruthless dictator, or for that matter, the creepy Facebook commenter who called me a full-fledged idiot and a New Age fraud. So that's Pam's offering for the 18th lesson, the lesson for today. And that lesson is, I am not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. And it's loaded with some complex thoughts. We have all kinds of people who talk about how, keep things private and don't go into anybody else's thoughts, and you have no right to go into somebody's thoughts or hold thoughts about them without their permission. And yet there are teachings like the Way of Mastery and the Course in Miracles that say we're all connected. This thing that we talk about, having this privacy and the privacy of our thoughts, is a fake construct. If we're all connected, if all minds are joined, as these great spiritual teachings tell us, there is truly no such thing as privacy. And that's a part of this lesson. That's going to have some, I'll say, ripples or repercussions for a lot of people, because we're taught to think in terms of personal privacy and let's call it limits or restrictions that don't in fact exist. They're just like so much of what we create as images in our minds. These things are hallucinations, like the dream of separation, that my mind convinces me that I'm separate and separated from everyone and everything else. As Einstein says, we are all part of this thing that we call a universe, and the pictures that our mind shows us that represent separation are only possible because of the very narrow bands of energy that our senses perceive. And if we were able to perceive the full range of energy, and everything is energy and everything is vibration. Excuse me, somebody just walked in with some. All right, thank you. If we were able to see the full range of energies that exist in our world, that we're made up of, that we are a part of, we would see an interconnected web of energies, one field within another, and that connection would help us understand there is no separation. When I think a loving thought, it affects me positively, and this is in the Reality Management Worksheet. When I tune into love, it stirs the love in everyone involved. This is that same resonant energy observation that our physicists talk about. It's like the concept of entanglement in quantum physics, where particles that have been connected and joined and then separated, even separated by thousands of miles, when something happens to one, it immediately, without any time lapse, creates that similar effect in the other that it's connected to. Michael Ryce in his lectures talks about it as how we are connected. Every molecule in the universe is connected to every other molecule in the universe. If we were able to see with eyes that mimicked insects and birds and other animals, and ears that had the hearing functions of every animal on the planet, we would hear frequencies that we can't hear currently with our human ears. We would see light frequencies that we cannot see with our current human eyes. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning of recognizing that there's so much more going on in the world than our perception, our current human perception, gives us. And that's what the Course in Miracles is trying to help us do. Increase, expand, step into an entirely different process of perception. And in that process of perception, learn to question a lot of the false beliefs, assumptions, prejudices that we were conditioned into by our culture and our family, and that are inherent in the language that we are using to try and describe or discuss amongst ourselves what our experience of life actually is. So, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. How do these lessons strike you? How is it going for you to be doing the lessons if you are. Or if you're choosing not to, what's another topic you would like to have us spend some time on today? We have 38 minutes left, plenty of time for a conversation. And the phone lines are open, as they say on most radio shows. We have 6 people on the call directly that I can see, nobody else in the chat room, and plenty of time. I've also been going through recently the book by Alan Cohen, The Tao Made Easy. And I have been through several times the Course in Miracles Made Easy, also by Alan Cohen. And when I discovered that he had the book, The Tao Made Easy, I thought, well, I should take a look at that. I should give that a listen, actually. I don't have the actual book, but his way of studying and blending these great spiritual teachings. I think he's had some time that he spent with the not so great as well, but what he does, instead of just reading, writing out, and then interpreting the stanzas of the Tao, is he talks about life and life's issues and tells stories, and then references the verses in the Tao that might correspond to the observations he's making. And so far it's quite enjoyable. And what's striking me is that I've mentioned this several times in my work in the support groups and on the internet show here on Mindshifters Radio, that I've experienced that a lot of people spend a lot of time comparing one philosophy or school of teaching to another, and looking for the differences and highlighting the differences and talking about how because of this difference or that difference, they have a better understanding than some other teaching, that their teaching is somehow better. And my personal experience is that I get so much more out of every book I pick up when I put on the filter of looking for the similarities. And it's not too surprising that the more I do that, the better I get at doing it. It's like any other skill that I practice. And one of the things that's striking me as I'm going through the Tao is that the core teachings in the Tao are the very same as the Way of Mastery and the Course in Miracles. And I didn't get that the first couple of translations of the Tao that I picked up. It was probably already always there. And yet, if my eyes aren't tuned in to see it, I don't experience it. I don't get that. I don't create for myself that experience of the similarity in the lessons. And so, but if you think about it, and you think about how old the Tao Te Ching is, probably estimates, generally people just talk about it as being, 2,500 years old, or thereabouts. Well, that's quite a bit older than the Course in Miracles. And, that's quite a bit older than the stories we're told of Yeshua. And so, if the truth is that this is 2,500 years old and it's basically the same message, than a lot of what people like Guy Finley say. These are timeless wisdoms. They don't belong to anybody. They've been here as long as human beings have had language, so I suppose. They've had any level of higher consciousness. So one of the things that struck me as I was reading the Course in Miracles lesson the last few days, how it says, do these practice periods, but don't do them for 3 or 4 minutes if you get tense, if you are getting stressed. Over and over again, we're just in the first 20 lessons. Over and over again, the commentaries about the lessons tell us reduce the stress. If the required 2 or 3 minutes of the practice period produces stress, reduce the time for it so you stay in the flow, you stay in the ease. And the Tao is all about going with the flow of life, the flow of creation, the flow of the Creator. And if you don't get that out of the lesson, you probably won't get much good out of any lesson that you take from, whether it's the Tao or the Course in Miracles. I was trying to make some notes about this as I was writing, and I'm having difficulty pulling it up right now. But so the Tao, and from the Tao Made Easy, there's this quote that Alan Cohen says, these 2 sentences are basically the summary of the whole of the essence of the Tao. It's like the cheat sheet for the whole of the Tao Te Ching. Life becomes difficult when you attempt to do things that don't belong to you. And life becomes easy when you do what belongs to you. And the example that Alan Cohen gives is, he says, he gives this quote that most of us have heard. If you find something you love to do, a way to make a living at something you love to do, you'll never work another day in your life. And he talks about how, when people meet him, they talk to him about all the books he's written, and they say, wow, that just sounds like grueling work. And he says, that's not really his experience, that when he's in the flow, when he decides to do a book, when he decides to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, sentence after sentence and page after page, he's just in the flow. He loves it. It's rewarding and enriching. When he spends a long weekend or a week in an intensive teaching where people are coming and talking about all of these deep traumas in their life, from childhood sexual abuse to murder and rape and all this other stuff, he has more energy at the end of it than when he started, because he's not resisting it, and to him it is so rewarding to help people through to the other side of all of that negativity. On the other hand, he says, if he has to sit down with his accountant, and the accountant is trying to explain to him double entry accounting, he can't barely stand it for 10 minutes before his brain is starting to explode. And the accountant says, oh, I love this stuff. I could do this stuff for forever. So the accountant has found something that belongs to him to do, and Alan Cohen, in his writing and teaching, has found something that belongs to him to do. And the corresponding stanza from the Tao that goes with that is, and he quotes this from the Tao, allow your life to unfold naturally. Know that it is a vessel of perfection just as everything else is. Your life, your very common, ordinary, everyday life, as the Way of Mastery says, is the most perfect ashram you could ever be in. The most perfect learning school is your life, your everyday life, the way it unfolds. You don't need to go searching for teachers. You don't need to go searching for deep, life-altering experiences. The everyday unfolding of your life, in which you recognize that the slightest irritation is connected to the deepest rage. That life is the perfect teaching school for you. So our call-in number is 563-999-3581. What's your comment or question? What teaching lessons is life bringing to you these days that you would like support in addressing or processing or understanding? What's been one of the slight minor irritations in your life that might indicate connection to a deeper rage that it would be useful for us to help you process? I've had several people recently who have been told that their relationship, what they thought was going to be their lifelong relationship, is not going to be, that the other person is opting out and or betraying trust or stepping into those behaviors that the other partner has already indicated would be deal breakers. And the question is, how does one respond when life is bringing you things that your mind is convinced shouldn't be there, that this is wrong? Just like what we're discussing in the last Tuesday's group. We have support groups that run. We'll have another one tomorrow night. But on the Tuesday support groups, we're in the middle of doing the Michael Singer course, Learning to Live from a Place of Surrender. And the entire point of the second lesson is to lay out the flow of the universe from the Big Bang, where the best our scientists can tell us is that there was no physical matter as we would perceive it with our senses, and then there was this thought explosion that created energy movement, and then matter crystallized, etc., that gave rise to, that's been unfolding for 13.84 billion years to create the universe that we are now experiencing. And so the whole point of that lesson is that everything we see, every person we interact with, every event that unfolds, every object that we experience has been in production, is a result of the unfolding of the creation process that's been unfolding for 13.84 billion years. And so the highlight of that lesson is, how silly is it of me to think that my conscious logical mind, that sometimes forgets what I'm supposed to be taking to the office, so I have to go back and get my computer or my phone or my coffee, that mind thinks it knows better than the way the universe is unfolding how life should unfold and what should be happening. And that's exactly the same message as the Tao. When the Tao says everything about your life, as it unfolds, is a vessel of perfection. Allow your life to unfold naturally. Look at those events that you experience in your life, and some part of you wants to say, this is wrong, this is bad, this shouldn't be happening. And at least for the point of an experiment, a thought experiment, just try asking, I wonder how this is going to work out. I wonder how this is going to turn into a blessing. I wonder how this holds a lesson I need to learn to move to the next level. Welcome, Susan.
Hey, hi, Dr. Tim. This is the most provocative lesson because here we are agreeing now, you've been on the show enough and read enough, that it's an inside job, that whatever we feel in the way of anything, joy or upset, is our feeling.
Creation. It's our creation.
Our creation, okay. And then we're told that everything is shared, which makes us this diaphanous or membrane, this porous membrane of receptors. We are picking up stuff all the time. So the challenge is even greater to allow whatever is happening in actuality come through to us, allow that it will have some kind of influence on us or impact, and then recognize that our perception of it is our business and our creation. But it isn't as if we're in a vacuum where we're just dealing, or a semi-vacuum. Maybe we're dealing with a childhood trauma, but on the other hand, we're not only dealing with that, we're dealing with the trauma of everybody else or everybody's interpretation, everybody's views of things are affecting us all the time, right? I mean, this is when empaths say,
well, but when you say affecting us all the time, notice the energy in your voice. And
right.
and the point of this is that those effects are self-created.
So ideally, we would just register. We would just notice. We would just see, hear, and feel, and not even feel. We would see and hear. Yeah.
Well, just instead of going to the ideally, and that part of your mind that wants to go to, how do I do it right? How do I do it perfect? How do I never make another mistake? Instead of going there, let's just add some simple practices like the Course in Miracles is calling us to. Let's just add these simple little exercises and to see what they reveal. Let's I know you're going to hate this next word, but let's be patient. What if I just start to say, wow, I've had X number of years, right? I've got 6 decades of life under my belt, and I've got 6 decades of experiences full of, I don't like this, I don't like that, that's bad, that's horrible, why can't I have this, when will that happen, I can't wait for this to happen. What if I just start the practice of looking at everything that unfolds in my life, especially those things that I have a tightness or a tension or a tendency to want to reject or judge, and catch that tension, use that tension as my trigger to call a time out and take a breath and start asking these very calm, very from that seat of the observer place with a gentle breath, ask these questions like, well, I wonder how this is going to turn out better than what I had planned. I wonder how this is going to turn into a blessing. I wonder how this holds a lesson I need to learn to move to the next level. I wonder how this is part of a bigger plan I don't have any access to right now. What if I just introduce that kind of an exercise rather than trying to fix it all and be done and be perfect? That's what these exercises are calling us to.
All good. Okay. You jump right to the end thing of fix it all and have it be all perfect. I didn't say that, but I know I'm guilty probably of heading in that direction. But I just began to think I had less of a handle on my life that I was thinking I was beginning to get. So
I think you probably have more of a handle on your life than you realize. I think you're probably doing it far better than you realize. And yet, the old filter, which wants to judge it negatively, is still in place. And it's running on autopilot.
That's true. Well, I had an incident this morning, a double-pronged. I have two kids, all right? One kid, who's a doctor, went to the hospital and texted me that he was having his third bout of diarrhea. And that means he's extremely anxious. It's always worse on Mondays, which tells you it's a thought disorder. Terribly filled schedule, double, triple bookings because people have emergencies and the staffing is thin. So I do my deep breathing and I'm walking around doing my disentanglement from my if he isn't okay, then I'm not okay mindset, which kicks in. And then my daughter calls, talks about one of her sons, and I tell her something about the power person. I've told her before. I was repeating myself. She stayed silent. At the end of it, she said, "Mom, you've told me that before." And she sounded genuinely irritated. So here's Mom, not doing too well. And I'm thinking, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, here's the homework. And then I read this lesson, which I had read actually before that, and I thought, this is a very challenging universe. There's a wonderful phrase in one of the teachings that just says, and it's a very convincing setup. In other words, we are easily sucked in. So that's one reason I'm asking about this. I mean, the answers won't be different. It'll be the same. All the more invitation to do the work and help both of my kids by staying centered and well and seeing the best in everybody and breathing and letting things go. But it just seems as if we're kind of sitting ducks for the whole universe because we're so connected. I'm not only connected to my daughter and son, but I'm connected to everybody else and everything else. Seemed like a bit much, that's all.
Well, it is. It's way too much if I'm supposed to fix it. Oh my God, yes. It's just absolutely crushing if I'm supposed to fix it.
Well, I don't think I'm supposed to fix it. Maybe with my daughter, a good apology would be good, and it'll be forthcoming.
Well, I'm talking about at the level of what you just said, where you're trying to think of what to say for your daughter and for your son, who are not kids anymore. They're full-grown adults, right? At that level, if I think it's my job to figure out what to say here, it's overwhelmingly crushing for me. I am nowhere near smart enough to come up with something useful to say to my kids when they're in trouble.
Yeah.
When they're having problems.
I love that. I love that.
I have no idea. I look at the mistakes in my life. I look at the way my life unfolded and how many times I've labeled this as bad or wrong, etc., and the losses I've had and the missteps and the things I've done that I would look back on and say, well, that was idiotic. When I look at all of that and I think I'm going to give my kids advice, that's just nuts.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's just crazy. If I drop into, I'm the great and powerful Dr. Hayes, and I've got this doctorate license, and I'm gonna be there and tell my kids what's right and wrong and how they should live their lives, there is the recipe for disaster. I am Thelma and Louise. I am both of them in the car, and my foot is slammed down on the accelerator, and I'm heading for the cliff. There's just nothing good is going to come of that. But when I get in that mode, and I had one just yesterday with one of my sons, similar to what you had with your son this morning and your daughter, I just watch all the things that my mind wants to say and swallow them down and cancel them and ask to be shown and just ask to be okay with however the call unfolds and do the listening and the reflecting, and then trust that anything else that comes out of my mouth that isn't me thinking it through is fine. It's based in allowing the flow.
Really good.
It's based in allowing the flow. It's based in recognizing how many times I've been in the support group or on the internet show, and all this stuff is flowing out just without me thinking about it. And then somebody says, hey, could you say that again? And I'm absolutely helpless. There's just no way I could say it again because it was in the flow.
Yeah.
So I spent at least half the time in the phone call with my son yesterday just reminding myself, this isn't yours to fix. And then asking to be shown.
Exactly the ticket. That is exactly the ticket. So I say to myself, why is my son telling me this? Well, he's probably telling me for a lot of reasons, but it's none of my business. My business is to listen. That's it.
Well, and part of why our sons and daughters tell us these things is because they're part of the dance that we have helped create with them.
Absolutely true.
You know, sometimes they don't tell us this, that, and the other thing because we've created the dance of they don't want to come back and get lectured again. And sometimes they do tell us this, that, and the other thing because we'll step into lecturing and they want to fight against that. I mean, it's just these patterns in our relationships are very, very powerful and often unseen by us because our mind tends to think about things in terms of everything is separate. And so my phone call with my son yesterday was just happening in a vacuum. We've never had a conversation about that kind of thing before, so it's just completely devoid of every other conversation I've had with him, which is just silly. So if I step back and I take a breath and I ask to be shown and I watch for the patterns and I watch for my tendency to want to fix it or change it and swallow it down before it happens, I leave the possibility open for something else, something newer, something different to happen than has ever happened between us before.
What did you mean when you said it happened in a vacuum and it never happened before?
It's my tendency to be in a phone call with somebody and think, is this just about this phone call? But if it's somebody that I'm a business partner with, or it's my son or daughter, or it's my significant other, there's this whole history of the pattern of that relationship that's impacting what I'm about to say and do unless I wake up. Unless I catch myself from operating on autopilot, unless I catch the thought that, I'm going to fix this for them, or I'm going to have an answer here, or because that's all old stuff.
So when you said this had never happened before, you mean you were new. You were absolutely in your healthy place where you could.
No. What I'm talking about in that is I tend to think that my conscious logical mind is free and clear to be brilliant and serve up a perfect answer for them, when in fact my whole history of relationship with this person is active. So it's like what happened with you and deciding to talk to your daughter about power person dynamics. It's like your mind was telling you, okay, she's coming to me, she's got a problem, I'm going to fix it, as though you have no history of being the fix-it person, as though you haven't told her about the power person dynamic before. And of course you have. And of course you have a very complex history with her. And all of that was playing out, and therefore your inability to see all of that playing out or tune into it leaves you repeating the old pattern, leaves you on autopilot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's right. That's right. And so the temptation is, with her, is to try to fix the broken something. Whereas probably the best thing to do is just wait till she calls again, and we go from there. And if she brings it up, okay. If she doesn't, okay. But for me, never to do that again, to be conscious. I wasn't conscious. I went unconscious.
And back into an old pattern.
Right. Okay.
And something about the old pattern says, you have to fix this.
Right.
You're everything about anything you would have said to your daughter in the conversation today, based on what I know about you as a person, would have been about trying to help your daughter, trying to fix a situation for her, trying to lift a burden, trying to be a resource, whatever.
Yeah. Right. That's true.
Right?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, your conscious logical mind is so limited and burdened by old unconscious patterns that there's nothing you're going to come up with from your conscious logical mind that's going to help her. So sit there and watch the conscious logical mind, and then just, thank it for its its intention to be helpful, but don't let it act.
Okay.
Just watch it, and then just keep asking to be shown. Take a breath, turn inside, notice the tension. Oh wow, I'm getting all tighter tense. Like this is my problem.
Yeah.
This is not my problem. And if I treat it as though it's my problem, and I come up with, and oh boy, here's my son yesterday telling me about a serious life situation that's going on, and I'm a psychologist, and I've got over 46 years of experience doing therapy, and I'm going to tap into that, and I'm going to say the perfect thing for him. If I say anything from my role as therapist in that phone call, I'm pretty much guaranteed to make a mess of it.
Yeah.
Right? To come from a place of expertise when my son is coming to me in this raw emotional space is not what he's looking for. He's got a therapist, right? Or he could get one if he wanted one.
Yeah. That's so true. It reminds me of, in our intervention, the woman running it said, do not, now that they're in AA or now that they've had this intervention, they have some tools. You back off, because they will not be healed by family members, no matter how good and right they are. They need to hear it from somewhere else. Yeah, that applies.
Well, and it's in the Tao and in the Course in Miracles, it's the Course in Miracles exercises and the Tao are trying to get us to understand that whatever my conscious logical mind is going to come up with, it distorts things. It creates all kinds of disruptions. And nothing I see with my eyes, these images that my mind is showing me, they are not the truth of life. I mean, we're only, 17, 18 lessons into the Course, and already we've been told that when we see anything that leaves us feeling upset in any way, it means we're not seeing the world accurately.
Right.
My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. That's lesson 11. Lesson 12, I'm upset because I see the meaningless world that my mind is showing me rather than the actual world that exists. So if I'm on a phone call with a family member and they're, if it's anything short of, I just had a car accident, I can't think clearly, what should I do next? in which case I can be the rational person saying, okay, stay where you are, I'll get, I'll call 911 or I'll get somebody to you. If it's anything other than that, if it's an emotional thing, it's of my son with his upset, his diarrhea on a Monday morning, or my daughter with her emotional issues about some relationship, if I drop into fix-it mode, I am 100% in the conscious logical mind using the sights and sounds provided by my ears and my eyes, and I'm seeing something that's leaving me feeling tense or upset or pressured. And the Course in Miracles lessons have already told us in just the first 18 lessons, that means I'm not seeing accurately. I'm in a hallucination. The perception that I'm creating is driven by fear and pain and hostility, so it's not accurate. So anything I can do to interrupt that process instead of acting from it, to just watch it, step back into the observer position and watch it and ask to be guided and ask to be shown, and perhaps feed back to the person what they're feeding me so they can clarify their own thoughts or emotions. Anything other than that is in error. And I can know it's in error because I'll feel the tension. I'll feel the upset.
That's really good, Dr. Tim.
Well, it's not Dr. Tim, it's the Tao, and it's the Way of Mastery, and it's the Course in Miracles.
Has filtered through your noodle. Your noodle is chugging today. So thanks. That's good. That's very helpful.
Well, I'm glad it was helpful. I'm glad you called and shared that process, because it's helpful for all of us to remember that. And you've done it again. You help us get to the last few minutes of our first hour. So thank you so much. And you've done it again. You help us get to the last few minutes of our first hour. So thank you so much for the call, and I'm glad you thought it was useful. I'm chuckling because,
Thank you.
Okay, well, because I was in the same situation yesterday with my son, and I'm hoping that was useful for him too. But so blessings, and I'll look forward to your next time you call, and I'll mute you, and we'll get ready for transition. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false.